All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday, March the 21st. Thank you for joining me today. This is a webinar for the retail food industry as we go through the main changes in the Colorado Retail Food Code. So this webinar is not going to cover every single change that has occurred in the code, but I'm going to be covering the 5 that are the most impactful to the retail food industry, owners, operators such as yourself. And we're going to go through what those major items are. This is your platform to ask questions. And we're going to talk through what to expect from us as well as we start going out and doing inspections in the field on this new code. All right, so to get us started here, I just want to give you a bit of an overview. So this is the kind of general timeline of what occurred leading up to today. So as a reminder, the Colorado Retail Food Code and the Retail Food Program is delegated by the state of Colorado, meaning that Department of Public Health and Environment delegates the retail food program down to locals such as El Paso County Public Health. And we are then at the local level implementing that program and working with you as industry members. So these food code changes are voted on and approved by our state Board of Health. There was a state Board of Health meeting on January 17th in which the board determined to move forward with adopting the 2022 version of the FDA food code by reference. So for those of you who may not be as familiar, prior to this change, we were on the 2013 version of the FDA food code. I want to take a moment to also explain that the reason why we started with the 2013 version is that the state of Colorado did not move to the FDA food code till January of 2019. Prior to January 2019, the Certified Food Protection Manager was not a requirement at all in our code. So rather than moving to asking industry to go all the way up to, at that time, it would have been the 2017 version was the newest at that time when we were adopting in 2019. And that would have required a CFPM on site at all times. So we wanted to, as a state, stair step into this Certified Food Protection Manager requirement. So I just want to share that for awareness that I understand, and I've heard a lot of feedback from industry members on the challenges involved with obtaining a Certified Food Protection Manager. So I wanted to share with you all where and how we've kind of moved towards this requirement. So again, in January of 2019, the state of Colorado first adopted the 2013 version of the FDA food code, saying that all establishments that meet the requirement of needing a CFPM, such as a full service restaurant or those that don't fall into an exemption of needing one, are required to have at least one for their establishment. So that is what the requirement has been up until now. Effective March 16th of 2024, we now have adopted the 2022 version of the code. That now requires that the person in charge at your establishment needs to hold a Certified Food Protection Manager certificate. Now, again, in an effort to stair step this requirement, the state of Colorado, with the Board of Health's approval, has decided to delay that requirement in particular until March 1st of 2025. So again, that is one item that is delayed in implementation, whereas all the other requirements that we're going to talk about are currently effective as of March 16th, 2024. So just want to review that first. Now let's dive in. So moving in now to some of the other changes. Again, I'm going to review today the top 5 changes that have the largest impact to you as a business owner or operator. And again, these changes did go into effect on March 16th. And I want you to know through this process, we are your partner. We'll talk a little later on the things that we will do to further assist you as industry members. All right. So here are the main 5 changes that we're going to go over today. Of course, Certified Food Protection Manager, I know that is a pressing item on all of your minds, and please know I'm going to spend a lot of time talking through that with you. But again, please know that is delayed. So that particular requirement is not going to be required until March 1st of 2025. The next item we're going to talk about is cleanup of vomiting and diarrheal events. And that is really the new requirement is an extension of what's existing. So we'll go over that in more detail. There's also a requirement on allergen notifications. And I hope I can put you at ease during this presentation that there's a lot of ways that you can meet this requirement. So we'll talk about that. Fourth, we're going to talk about storage of packaged and unpackaged foods. This is an extension of what exists of proper food order. So the addition here is unwashed fruits and vegetables. And lastly, we're going to talk about manufacturer cooking directions. That one is a little tricky for some of you, I think. So I'm going to spend some time going through that, and I look forward to hearing the questions that you have on that one in particular. Okay, so moving in, the Certified Food Protection Manager. Now, all of you should have received as a part of this invite for this meeting, all of the handouts that you're going to see in these slides are also attachments in the emails that I've sent out. So you already should hopefully have these attachments. If not, they will absolutely be on both the state's website, which you see the link on here, as well as they will be on our website also. Now, for the CFPM, again, delayed implementation until March 1st, 2025. The 2 main pieces I want you to be aware of is if you are an establishment that currently holds a license for any of the exemptions you see there, technically in the code we were on previously up until March 16th, you technically did not have to have a certified food protection manager. It's always highly encouraged. And I want you to know that exemption is going to continue even with this new requirement and on the new code. So really the thought process behind the Certified Food Protection Manager is having that higher level knowledge of somebody on staff during business operations that can offer that higher level knowledge and oversight of the food safety operations. So that's really where this is coming from. So anybody who's holding a license currently that has a grocery store license without a deli, either size, small or large, over that 15,000 square feet, or if you hold a limited license, including a limited brick and mortar or limited mobile also. So please know off the bat, those are license holders that do not have to worry about complying with the CFPM requirement. However, we do highly encourage as an owner and operator that you have that so that you have that higher level of knowledge to better oversee the food safety operations of your business. Now, on the handout over here to the right, I want you to see that this right here is what we're looking for during our inspections. So every routine inspection, any inspection we do, you will hear my staff or myself say, we conduct a risk-based inspection. So the duty of a certified food protection manager isn't necessarily to know everything in the code and feel like they have to answer, questions that don't relate to their business operation. What a certified food protection manager is required to do is to be able to demonstrate their knowledge during an inspection that we're at in these 5 foodborne illness risk factor areas. So that's really the area of concern that we have and where we want you to spend your time in your operation overseeing and creating backup plans. How are you going to know if that cooler goes out? Do you have procedures in place? Do you have maybe a shift lead check, or do you yourself check? Do you assign certain staff to check that? What happens if it is out? Do we log that somewhere? Do we have a process to follow for throwing food away if it's potentially been out of temperature for longer than 4 hours? So those are all the different things that my staff and I are going to be looking at during inspections. It's the way we have been doing it, and we're going to continue doing it. So the big change here, again, is previously you were required to have a certified food protection manager that even if you are maybe a business that has multiple locations, you could technically have had one person under up until now with that CFPM requirement. And as long as they are part of oversight of that business operation, you are meeting that requirement. The big change now, effective March 1st, 2025, is that you will have to have somebody on site during those food preparation hours that holds that certification. So that's the change. Another thing I want you to know is from our standpoint and looking at it from a risk-based inspection standpoint, holding that piece of paper, holding that certificate that says, I have a person on site with this certification, doesn't necessarily do us any good if during the inspection they're unable to answer questions around these 5 foodborne illness risk factors. So I just want to take this moment to dig in a little deeper in explaining that for a certified food protection manager, the two pieces there is having it and what holding your duties. So from a violation standpoint, the biggest part is ensuring that you are able to demonstrate that knowledge. That violation holds a higher point level, which will further impact the result of your inspection much more than what we refer to as a core violation. It's a low violation for having that certificate or not. So I say this to you as industry because I want you to know that we also recognize there are challenges with obtaining that certified food protection manager certification, a big one being language barriers. And we understand that there are certain restrictions in that, and we're working to locate as many resources as we can. But again, if you can demonstrate during an inspection that the person in charge has that necessary knowledge to properly have oversight of that operation, that is what we care the most about. So again, if you don't have that certificate in hand, starting March 1st, 2025, on site at all times, it is technically a violation. However, it holds a much lower impact to your overall score of your inspection as opposed to not being able to demonstrate that knowledge. So I just wanted to really explain that piece. And I'll take some more questions in a moment here. I also want you to notify in this handout that I'm referencing on this slide, as well as what you've been sent, is when we're talking about a certified food protection manager, that can come from any of these accredited programs that you will find listed following this link here or using this QR code. So as long as whomever you go through is considered ANSI approved, we are going to take that certification as valid. Now, some people ask a lot of questions around what is the difference in a certified food protection manager and the ServSafe manager certificate. Again, really make sure that whatever you are getting is that you're specifically making sure that you are getting the certified food protection manager. Any accredited program such as ServSafe will use that exact same terminology. If for some reason you're seeing something that's not meeting that terminology, by all means, please forward that over so I can take a look at that certificate. But again, if you are going through this link in this website and making sure that it's ANSI approved, and you have your certificate says Certified Food Protection Manager, that's what we're looking for, because there is a difference between that and a food handler certification. So a food handler certification is also very beneficial. to food handlers, but it doesn't hold the same level of knowledge as as a certified food protection manager does. All right. So I want to take a pause there, and I want to ask if there are any questions at this moment, and I'll read through the chat here as well. If you want to raise your hand, you can do so. Or voice. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Carlos.
Oh, I just wondered on the management certification. I just wondered if we can. This is kind of fun. I like it. Can we do the certification online? Can you just get it, or still gotta have a test?
That is a great question. Thank you. So there are some vendors that do offer taking that online. So I know State Food Safety and I believe ServSafe has moved to this as well. They do offer that you can do the course individually on your own, and then you can do the course online, but you need a webcam. So that is a main change for you that you would need to be aware of.
What does that mean? I'm sorry, I not quite understand that, Samantha.
That's okay. So if you take the Certified Food Protection Manager course online, it has to be proctored. So a lot of the vendors that will offer that option to take the test online, you do have to have a webcam, and you have to go through whatever checks they have in place to make sure that it meets their requirements. So just to be aware of that. Mhm.
Okay.
And then we will be working with our local partners as well to make sure that if there are whatever local opportunities there are for you guys to obtain this, we will be sure to share that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Carlos. Okay, so another question I'm seeing, great question. So all shifts, every day, all locations. So there is a caveat to this. One thing that I want you guys to realize is this is going to be required during the actual food operations of the establishment. So, for example, if you are a facility that only offers food at certain times of the day, bars are a great example where after a certain time, food's no longer offered, that kitchen closes. So if you are an establishment such as that, where the business itself might continue operating, but food is not available after a certain time, that certified food protection manager is only going to be required during the food operations. So a bar would not be required to hold a certified food protection manager if they have a full service restaurant up until a certain time. Now, keep in mind a bar that holds a limited license because they might do only commercially made products like pizzas that they're heating up. They fall under this limited license category and wouldn't need to fill this at all. They would be exempt from the Certified Food Protection Manager course and certificate requirement. I see another question on mobile units as well. So mobile units will be required to have a certified food protection manager if they hold a full service license. If a mobile unit has a limited license, that limited license category would not be required to hold a certified food protection manager certificate. Okay. I see a couple hands up here. Frank, how can I help you?
So I work at a wedding venue, and I'm here for the duration for the food aspect of it. But do we need to have a CFPM during our cake cutting or our late night bar?
So it would be on, do you yourself hold the food license, or is it the caterer that would be just producing that food?
I am the caterer. We have an
You are the
on-site.
caterer.
Yes.
Okay. So you would be required to have somebody during the food service side with that CFPM, yes. If you are a event venue that is hiring a caterer and the caterer is doing all the work, that CFPM requirement would fall on the caterer while they are preparing that food and during the drop off of that food. Once that's complete, then the venue itself would not be held to needing to have somebody on site with that certified food protection manager.
Now, in my case, I do
Mhm.
make everything on site. Like,
Okay.
for example, we have our buffet time from 4 to 6, but they
Okay.
requested a late night bar and a cake cutting at 8 o'clock at night. Would I have to
Oh, I
have a
see.
CMP at that time?
Thank you for that clarification. So I would say no, because at that point the food's already been cooked and served. And if it's just a matter of cutting the cake, no, at that point you wouldn't need that CFPM. You would need that CFPM during the actual preparation of that food and that meal. I hope that helps to
Awesome.
answer your question.
No, that's
Yeah.
perfectly good. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
You are very welcome. Thank you. Samuel, I see you have a question.
Is this certification, the Certified Food Protection Manager, is that going to replace then the ServSafe course, or are both certificates going to be required?
So I want to be careful in how I answer because I don't want to make an assumption, but ServSafe has always offered this course. So this certification is not a new requirement. It's not a new certificate for ServSafe to offer.
I understand that
Yeah.
ServSafe Manager's course,
Mhm.
is this course, or is it a separate course in itself, or in which one's going to be required?
I hear you. So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying the current ServSafe manager course should be the same as what I'm referring to as Certified Food Protection Manager. I will clarify that on ServSafe's website as well, just to ensure and do some follow-up with you all that I'm not making an assumption in that, but my understanding is that it is the same course.
Because wasn't this course always required then to get a food license?
So what I was saying is this requirement what has been required to get a food license since 2019 for all licenses except the ones you're seeing listed here with an exemption.
Okay, so that makes
Yep.
sense then. That's the
Yep.
course I 219, which I'm actually getting ready to do here again in a couple of weeks.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I hope that helps to answer your question. So
Yeah,
again,
no, it's actually great. It does help. That means I don't have to have two different certs. It's expensive after a while.
Yes, exactly. So, and these are all wonderful questions that helps me kind of gauge too, what clarifications I can get for you all. But again, we've been talking about this same requirement since 2019. So I just want to, like I said, kind of give you guys that kind of stair step that we've been taking into now, starting in March 2025, having somebody with that certificate on site at all times during the actual food operations. Okay, Jessica, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you. You might have just clarified this, but I'm just trying
That's okay.
to process a little bit because I just got my manager certificate and oversee as an owner 2 different operations, but I am not there, full time.
I see.
And so we have, we're primarily sort of like an assembly operation, but have sometimes a week that we do preparation. So I'm just trying to make the distinction. Is it like anytime we're serving food that we need someone with the certification on site in each location?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. And
Okay.
that is going to be a shift. I understand. And that's where I'm saying we want to start talking about this now. And we gave that I just want to clarify that when I keep saying we, I mean El Paso County Public Health was an added advocate in asking for this delay in the requirement for on-site at all times. So I just want you guys to know that throughout this process, we knew this was an item that industry understandably is concerned about being able to meet for a variety of reasons, and we understand that. So I want you to know that as an industry partner, we at El Paso County Public Health, we're an advocate in requesting the delay of that particular requirement. I hope that helps to answer your question, Jessica.
Yes, thank you.
You are very welcome. I see another hand up with the name Team Lincoln. How may I help you?
Yes, I have 2-part question. First of all, my name's Rebecca. It's just my store.
Okay.
2-part question that are unrelated. Number 1, you keep mentioning El Paso County, and I'm up in the Denver area. These regulations are statewide, correct?
City, county, and Denver is separate. So outside of city, county, and Denver, what I'm going to go over today does apply to everybody else in the state.
Okay. And then my follow-up question kind of is jumping back to what you said earlier.
Mhm.
Language barrier is kind of an issue. Are
Mhm.
there Spanish language options for, you know, like
Mhm.
the vast majority of the people in my team that are going to be in the restaurant at all times are going to be Spanish speaking folks. So is that an
Mhm.
option that you guys are rolling out or working with the partners to provide?
Yes, great question. And actually, there are quite a few of the vendors you'll find on this handout that do currently offer Spanish in both the course as well as the exam. So Spanish is
Right.
a primary language that is offered for many of these vendors you'll find currently. I know there are other languages we've received requests from that have proven to be harder to find. And that's where I wanted to really focus and let you guys know that even though this certificate on site at all times is going to be a violation if you don't have it starting March 1st, 2025, again, the priority that I want you all to focus on and what will actually more impact your score from a violation standpoint of points adding up and changing the result of your inspection is being able to demonstrate that knowledge. So please make sure that if you're having challenges, work with your assigned environmental health specialist. And at the end here, I'll go over some contact information. But please know that the biggest resource you have is whoever is assigned to you as an environmental health specialist. And our job is to assist you and help connect you with any resources that we're aware of. So I hope that helps to answer your question. Okay. All right. So with that, I am going to move into our next item here. All right. So cleanup of vomiting and diarrheal events. So I want you guys to know that again, the big change here is that prior to March 16th, all establishments have been required to have a procedure for in the event that there is a vomit or a diarrhea incident within the establishment. This is also the same exact procedures that we use if you have norovirus in your establishment or suspect that you have potentially an ill worker or a customer that maybe you were notified of that had noro or of any illness like that. This is also the same procedure that we were using for properly disinfecting for COVID-19. So this really came in handy during COVID-19. This was something that really ramped up for that as well. A lot of the disinfectants that you're using for noro also kill COVID-19. That was one pair up that we spent a lot of time about during that time that we were all working through COVID-19 response. Now, the change here again is that you've been required since 2019 to have a plan. Now the change is it has to be written. So before, during an inspection, you would have your assigned environmental health specialist would ask you questions. What do you do in these certain circumstances? What's your procedure? Now the change is that it has to be written. So a lot of times during our inspections, we have already been providing a written plan for you and saying, okay, if you don't have one, that's okay. We have one here that was written by the state, and go ahead and follow this if it meets your needs. So again, the big change here is that it is now written. And this is actually the second page or the last page of the top 5 changes handout that I emailed as well. This is found at the very end of it. So hopefully by receiving that, you guys are already in compliance. You can check one off the list. You got that one done. You now have a written plan. I want to pause for a second to see if there are any particular questions on this requirement. Melissa.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Just a quick question is, if this is what we normally do, is this okay to just print out and post?
Yep, absolutely. That's all you need to do.
Perfect.
Yep.
And I have one more question.
Of course.
The back to what we were talking about before with the certified food protection manager.
Mm-hmm.
If mine says, mine actually says that it's a serve safe food protection manager examination has been successfully completed. Is that compliant then?
Yes, it is.
Perfect.
That is
Okay,
perfect.
perfect. Thank you so much, ma'am.
You are very welcome. Thank you for the question.
Yes, ma'am.
Jessica, did you have another question?
No, sorry.
That's
didn't
okay.
put my hand down.
Not a problem at all. Just double checking. Okay. So with that, we're going to move on to the food allergen notification. Now, this one I can understand has created some confusion, has created some great questions already. So I want you guys to know that the intent of this requirement, now starting March 16th of 2024, is that you need to notify the consumer of any allergens you have in your establishment as an ingredient. Now, many of you have already done this and taken it probably even a step further by meeting your customer needs for things like gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free. A lot of you are already on this track and have already ramped up your menu notifications. I want you to know that there's really two pieces to this. You just need to first and foremost have something in writing that tells the consumer they need to ask questions about allergens. So you're basically saying, in my establishment, I have at least one of these 9 major food allergens. And if you would like more information on that, please request it. So that's really the crux of this requirement. Now, how you do that can be done in a variety of ways. Like I said, many of you have already really ramped up your menus. You've already put a lot of additional information trying to help your customers navigate what you as an establishment can or can't provide for allergens. Now, I want you to know that I can understand many of you have, again, already adapted to requests of celiac and gluten-free, for example. And many of you are already really, really good at explaining what you reasonably can or cannot provide that customer. And a lot of you have gotten really good at understanding the difference of, I can't promise that it's gluten-free because there is cross-contamination, whether it's shared fryer oil or maybe there is gluten in your establishment in general. Now, to meet this particular food allergen notification requirement, we are solely talking about an ingredient. You do not have to list out all the possibilities of cross-contamination during food preparation or storage. We are solely talking about an ingredient. So if you think about however that dish is made, what ingredients are in that dish? Do any of those ingredients in that dish meet the allergens of milk, egg, fish, crustacean shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, soy, and sesame? So sesame is the newest allergen that has been added. Now, again, during our inspections, ever since January of 2019, when we as a state first adopted the food code, we, in every inspection, ask a lot of questions about allergens. And previously, you were asked to be able to speak to what allergens you had in your establishment and what do you do if a customer requests XYZ. So you are already being asked to kind of talk through and demonstrate knowledge of allergens leading up till now. And now you're being asked to provide something in writing to the customer to ask you for further information on those allergens. Now, again, this handout you'll see on the slide is another one sent out with that email and with this invite as well, and will be available on our website here shortly and found at Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's website, as you see on there. And this shows you there is quite a few different ways you can do that. You can even use a little table tent that just says, hey, scan here for particular allergen information, or it could simply be ask your server. So I want to make that distinction that the details around what allergens are in what dishes can be given verbal. You just need to have something written that tells the consumer they need to ask for it. That's the requirement. How you handle that from there, you have a lot of different ways you can do that. And again, many of you are already doing this and probably going above and beyond with keeping up with requests from your customers on all the various allergen needs. So I just wanted to take that moment to talk through that in full, because at first glance, this can seem really cumbersome, but actually there's a lot of different ways you can easily meet this requirement. Okay, I'm going to pause there, and I see a question from a username, Tons of Fun. How can I help you?
Hello, thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Quickly on the vomiting part of it, are we required to have it in a ready-to-use booklet or posted on the wall?
So you have to be able to produce that written plan at the time of an inspection. So whether that's a document you keep maybe in the office, or easiest is definitely just post it on the wall somewhere. So whenever it is we show up for an inspection, we can easily ask, and whomever is the person in charge can point to it and say, here's our procedure.
Okay.
Obviously, we want to make sure that you also have the necessary items in that procedure to be able to say, we have the written procedure, basically you need bleach and gloves. So you guys should be pretty set there. And another thing I want to mention about the vomit diarrhea piece that a lot of people oversee, again, the main concern and the whole crux of this requirement is worrying about norovirus. Norovirus is what makes up majority of foodborne illnesses because it is a really hard one to get rid of. It will travel person to person. It lives very quickly. It lives on surfaces for an extended period of time. You have to use a targeted disinfectant for it and use the right amount of time that disinfectant tells you that you need to keep that surface wet. So there is a lot of value in truly knowing what your disinfectant is, following those manufacturer directions. Again, by having this written plan, you've already got it. Now read through this written plan and make sure that you can reasonably obtain what's all listed in here. Norovirus, you want to negate as soon as you have any thought that you may or may not have an exposure in your establishment. Even if maybe vomit and diarrhea didn't happen necessarily in your establishment, but you find out you have one of your employees that is reporting they were ill yesterday, maybe didn't tell you, they stay home today. If you don't properly disinfect surfaces right away, that can now easily spread to other food handlers. That's why hand washing is so vital. That's why sick employee policies are so vital. It's also why hand wearing gloves is just another layer of protection. So that's really the reasoning behind a lot of these things. Does that help answer your question?
It does. And quickly, just a quick follow-up, please.
Yep.
On the gluten part that we're talking about now, when we're talking about buns or hot dog buns that contain gluten, is that part of where I would have to have some sort of posting for the hot dog buns?
Yeah, great question. So gluten all in general doesn't fall into the allergen requirement. It's wheat. Wheat would be the concern there. And if somebody is gluten-free, wheat is part of that. But somebody who's gluten-free typically, not always, but typically also can't have barley, which is a different grain, but barley in itself isn't necessarily in that 9 major food allergens. So just pay attention to that wheat piece. What was that?
Previously, they would ask and I would show them the ingredients. But now currently, just to be clear, are we going to have to post something about the hot dog buns somewhere to be seen?
So what you will have to do is post something on your menu that says, menu items do contain wheat. If you have an allergen to wheat, please ask a server or ask for further information, and then you could provide. A lot of places now I see offer an entirely separate menu for gluten-free folks, which is very kind of anyone who does that. Again, many going above and beyond. But the written part just has to be notifying the consumer which of those allergens you have in your menu items as an ingredient.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Okay, I see another question from Marilyn. How can I help you?
Hi, thank you. Back to the vomit and diarrhea.
Yeah.
We, at our little soda shop that I run, our custodial team takes care of any of that stuff. What happens for us is we will cordon off the area, notify them, and then he has chosen to adopt this procedure that you posted. So
Awesome.
do we just need to add that on the top of that what we as the soda shop staff do?
Yeah, so if they're following this exact procedure, then you are golden. If
Okay.
they veer from this procedure and maybe use a different process, then you'd want that to be documented.
No, because when I talked to him and I showed him this the other day, yesterday or the day before, he said, well, they will adopt this. I mean, they were using something that kills COVID. It's another type of product, but he said, because you mentioned bleach in this, that's what they will use. But
Yeah.
we're the ones who notify them and cordon off the area.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
good?
So you are right on track.
Okay, thank you.
You are very welcome. Nikki, I see you have a question. Nikki, go ahead if you have a question you'd like to ask.
Samantha, I got a question. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Carlos.
I just wondered, I like to use bleach. I'm a bleach maniac, you know. Is that that cleans everything. I even drink it if it's possible, just to cure myself.
Bleach is great.
Bleach is great. Can I get all these certifications or all these vomit way to do it in Home Depot or Office Depot? I mean, or how what would be easier to get all this so I can get illuminated and all that?
Yeah, honestly, all the items listed in this written plan can be easily found even at the general grocery store. We're talking about a gallon of bleach, a measuring cup to do 1 cup of bleach per gallon, gloves, some sort of face mask, because with norovirus, it can get aerosolized. So the biggest concern when you're cleaning up something that is vomit or diarrhea incident, you want to protect yourself or whomever is cleaning it, because it can get aerosolized and you can breathe it in and you can get norovirus that way. That's why you hear norovirus spreading so quickly in an establishment. You hear it on cruise ships a lot because of close contained quarters. So really it is the most important that whomever is doing the cleanup in that event, that they properly protect themselves during that process. And then of course, just making sure you discard anything used. But these items can be found at a general grocery store as well.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Miss Nikki.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I'm a caterer, and my procedure has been ever since allergens came out, has been to speak, since I don't always see the guests, I speak with the bride and have her verify for me all the allergies that are, that her guests may have, which then the bride and I converse, and I let her know our procedure as far as she has to ask the staff to get those meals because they're kept separately. Is that enough for?
Yes. It sounds to me that you are meeting that requirement because you're informing them of, what items would contain potentially those allergens. You're taking that into consideration and you're then producing that food around it. So absolutely. Sounds like you are meeting that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
You are very welcome. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I'm going to move forward here. Keep the question coming. Oh, I see I have a question from Liz.
Yes, so on the allergen notification, so there's that text on the chat. Actually, will a QR code on the menu suffice that the customers can take a snapshot and go to the allergen notification?
And I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit, but I'll repeat back to make sure I heard you. Are you asking if a QR code could be used to notify that consumer of that further follow-up information?
Yes.
Okay, yes, and that is correct. You could absolutely do that. So just simply notifying them, hey, scan this QR code for more information on allergens as an ingredient in whatever is listed on your menu. That would absolutely meet that requirement.
How about the nutritional brochure that we already have available?
Yes, so that actually, the nutritional requirements aren't actually in our code. So that's actually not something that we're going to be looking at during our inspections, but I know that is something that establishments such as yourself follow for other requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Samantha,
very
I got
welcome.
one more question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, I just wondered. I mean, I'm in this little tiny little box dining. I'm a little more personal. Can I just write on my menu, each menu, ask for allergies? Because I am the master chef. I'm here 24 hours. All my waiters are very professional, and we can tell them how it's made it and done, and if they're allergic to nuts, don't eat that or whatever. That would be better for us. Would that be okay?
Absolutely, because you're providing, what I'm hearing is you're writing something on your menu, telling them to ask you questions, or you're providing it all on the menu, and then you are going to work through that with the customer directly. That would absolutely meet this requirement.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Thank you.
Hey, Samantha, one more question about
Go
this.
ahead.
I run like a counter service pizza place.
Okay.
And so our menu is up on the board. So just adding like a picture frame with a typed up thing that says, we prepare food with wheat, soy, and whatever else is in that list of those, and hanging it underneath. Feel free to ask any questions regarding your specific allergies. That would meet the requirement if it was on the wall, correct?
That is correct. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Thank you. All right. So moving on to the storage of packaged and unpackaged foods. So this little image here is what you guys are already following, right? So making sure that when we talk about proper storage order, we want to make sure that we are going off of cook temperature. So chicken, being that it requires and poultry requires the highest cooking temperature, we always want that at the bottom. Next, you have your ground meats. Then you have your whole intact meats and shell eggs. Above that, you've always had your ready-to-eat foods. Now, where this changes is previously, if you had raw vegetables that clearly needed to be washed, they were still in their original packaging before you washed them, before they were going to be used for service. It wasn't a violation if you had that under meats. Whereas now the raw vegetables prior to washing, again, still need to be over. So you'd want them up here above any of your raw meats. So a lot of you are already doing this. I see this more of a challenge for the facilities that have limited storage space. So again, this is a change, a new requirement. Many of you are already doing it. But I just wanted to include that, again, especially for facilities who have very limited space. I could see this being more of an impact on something. Is there any questions on this particular one? It's a little more straightforward, but I'm always happy to answer. Frank?
In the case that we do have our washed vegetables and raw vegetables and washed vegetables, do they have to be Could they be on the same level but different cart, different rack?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
Lastly, do you have that the image? Where can I get that type of image?
Oh,
Of that?
sure. That's actually pulled off a state food safety's website. So if you go to statefoodsafety.com, they have a lot of really good food safety flyers like that. You can absolutely pull from there.
Awesome. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Another thing I wanted to add to this requirement, we just got through St. Patrick's Day, but it's actually a really great example of where this might come into play. So in grocery stores during certain times of the year, like St. Patrick's Day, what we were starting to see is that to make it easier for the consumer, sometimes that whole cabbage was put in that reach-in cooler right next to the corned beef that is raw. And it wasn't fully separated. It had more or less like an open kind of divider in between. Technically, that would have been a violation starting March 16th because that is unwashed vegetable not being fully protected from raw meat. But again, that was also a short-lived problem as that was more or less for ease of the customer and convenience for St. Patrick's Day. But that's another example where this requirement would come into play. Now, I want to clarify that to say, if you make, say, kebabs, for example, and maybe on your one kebab, you put raw meat and vegetables kind of in between. Since that whole kebab is going to be cooked together, you do not need to worry about not meeting this requirement in that example, because it's very clear that is all being cooked together to that same required temperature that meat's required. So the risk is not there. So I just wanted to clarify that as two different pieces that might be more coming into play for restaurants. Okay. All right. So here is our last one here of the big 5 changes, the manufacturer cooking instructions. Now, it was hard for me to find a good image, but one image I found that really does kind of outline this is what we're talking about is seen in this red arrow. On any time you have packaging that is saying it's directing the consumer or you as the operator that there is a requirement to cook something as directed, you are now going to be required to follow that instruction from the manufacturer. Now, there's 2 major areas that I see this being important for you. Is this example previously wouldn't have been a violation because there's not a cook temperature requirement for vegetables. There is a requirement if you're trying to hot hold them, but just to cook them and serve them, historically, there was not a requirement for that. Whereas now, if you have, say, a package of frozen peas or frozen vegetables that you want to thaw and then put on, say, a salad bar, or just put in its raw form for the consumer, you have to be really careful that you are buying product that does not have language on it saying you have to cook it first. Now, the reason why manufacturers do this is essentially if they are telling you to follow certain cooking instructions, what they're basically doing is they're telling you that in their production and packaging, they did not put in steps in place to necessarily take care of all the potential bacteria that could grow, Listeria being the biggest one. That is the bacteria that we worry about in cold holding. That's the reason why date marking is required. And that's something that does typically require very cold temperatures and a kill step of some sort. So if the manufacturer didn't do that in their processes, they're essentially passing that buck, so to speak, onto you as the operator or onto the consumer to take care of that last safety step. So I want to explain that because this is probably going to be more impactful to you as industry. I did get clarification that this will include cooking instructions for, let's say, pre-packaged, pre-made soups or certain meats that maybe the manufacturer says on the label to cook it all the way to 165, even though technically previously in the code, the cooking requirement for that pork chop was only 145, but the instructions on that particular packaging might tell you to bring it to 165. If that's the case, you have to bring it to 165. I see that raw meat piece in cooking instruction probably being more impactful. So what this is going to do for you as an owner operator is really be mindful of the product you're buying and pay close attention to any manufacturer directions on that and make sure that works for your establishment and you're aware that you are now going to be required to have to follow that, even if it's above what the code previously required. Marilyn, you have a question? Go ahead. Okay. And Miss Marilyn, if you want me to circle back, I certainly can. I can't hear you, unfortunately, if you are talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had undone my mic. I'm so sorry. Thanks,
That's
Samantha.
okay. You're welcome.
I'm just looking at your example. If it says cook in the bag,
Yep.
is that a requirement as well?
It
Or
just
can you
needs to, yeah, so cook as directed. So this is more or less saying it can cook in the bag, but if you flip this over, it's telling you there's a certain temperature requirement you
Okay.
need to make.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, I apologize. It was really hard for me to find a good picture example. I know you guys typically aren't using this type of product in a restaurant for big full service restaurants, but just wanted you to see the language that I was referring to.
Right. And because what I'm referring to is the soups, because we get soups in a bag frozen.
Yep.
And to me, it's dangerous trying to empty soup out of a bag once it's
Yes.
cooked. So we
Yeah.
remove it and heat it to temp. So,
Yeah, and that's
okay.
fine as long as you're following that manufacturer direction on that cook temp that they're asking for.
right.
That's the main piece.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Hello, Brett. I see you have your hand up. How can I help
Hi.
you?
Hi, Samantha. It's Brett. I don't know if you'd seen my email or not in the last few days, but since I got you live, I figured I
Yeah,
would ask.
absolutely.
Okay, it's back at the beginning of the call about that food manager certification.
Yep.
Mission Coffee Roasters has a limited license,
Yep.
so we're not really doing a lot of food prep. And then we had done the state food safety food manager certification, and we've had
Uh-huh.
that in force for like the last 4 or 5 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, is this requirement that we were talking about today the same as that requirement or different? And then do we need to have that in place since we're not really doing food and we have a limited license? How does it work for us here at Mission?
Yes. So, to the first part of your question, technically, you are going above and beyond if you're holding that limited license and you have that certified food protection manager, you are going above that minimum requirement. So moving forward, you would not be expected to have a CFPM technically, and you also wouldn't be expected to have one on site at all times. So you are actually above that requirement currently. So you are set in
Okay.
that aspect. And to your other part of your question on if you have the state food safety certification for the food manager, that is the certification I'm referring to. So you are
So
set
they're
there
the
as
same.
well.
Even though the language on the thing right now says food protection manager, it's the
Mm-hmm.
same as the thing we
Yep.
already did, which was food manager certification. The language is just different, but it's actually the same document.
I do believe so. Because if the certification is saying protection manager, that's the main piece.
It says food manager certification and it's got the ANSI certificate on it. And we
Yep.
did it in response to the requirement when it came
Yep.
out about food manager 4 or 5
Yep.
years ago. So we went and passed it. But since the words did not exactly match, I was concerned. And then
Yeah.
I saw the part about what was it? The other part. About the limited license part.
Yep.
So then I was concerned. So I wanted to make sure. So you think we're okay since we're limited license?
Yes, because
Okay.
state food safety I've looked at quite a bit, and they are for sure, I know, on this ANSI approved list. So,
Okay.
yes, I believe you are covered there. State food safety is one of the most popular ones.
Okay. I sent you a copy of that certificate. If you get a chance,
I'll take a look
check
for
the
you.
email. Okay, well,
Yeah.
sorry, I'll go back on mute. Sorry if you'd already addressed those things, but I missed the
No,
first
not a
part of the
problem at
call.
all, Brett. I am here for you all as industry.
Okay,
So
okay.
thank you
It's
for
totally
catching
cool.
me. And I
Okay,
will be
sweet.
sure to respond to that certificate email for you just to
You
double check it.
you are awesome. All right, I'll stop taking up time. I'll go back on mute. Thank you.
Not a problem. You are very welcome. Okay, so we were last talking about the manufacturing instructions. So again, really this comes down to making sure that you are keeping a close eye on all packaging and keeping a close eye on making sure that you're following any specific directions that that manufacturer is asking for. Is there any other questions on the manufacturer directions?
Hey, Samantha.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I had an advisory board meeting with Ready Foods yesterday,
Okay.
and this actually came up because we were in discussions about them doing like a soup base with suggested recipes for that base.
Mm-hmm.
How would that work if they put like a suggested recipes for this base, like on their website or something like that? I'm just curious how that would work.
So are you saying it's something that you yourself are making and you're informing the consumer?
No, so I'm actually at a restaurant, but I sit on the board with them at an advisory board, and so they manufacture products for restaurants that we can purchase.
I see.
But there was talk about around the soup specifically, making a base like a bisque base or a noodle base. And then with the cooking instructions on that, they were going to offer suggestions on how to cook that recipe, like several different directions. Would that be something that we would have to follow those? Because their intention would be that we could get creative with it, but using their base.
Yeah, I would say just advise them to be really clear in that, because there's a big difference between quality, maybe recommendations versus for safety.
Okay.
So I would just encourage them to put some language around distinction, that it's not trying to say for safety purposes, you have to cook it to a certain temp in this manner.
Okay, gotcha. And then if I could circle back to that food protection manager, has there been any talk through the state about proctoring any exams at maybe a lower cost than some of the online ones?
Sure. So I do know that's an effort that we're making here at the local level with El Paso County Public Health, is to find what all of those opportunities are locally and to get that out to you. I know that the Pikes Peak chapter, the Restaurant Association here as our local chapter, they do partner with restaurants quite a bit as they are a restaurant industry chapter. And they also will connect restaurants to different opportunities. So I also encourage you to reach out to them as well. But what I'm going to be doing is trying to get together a list of all of those local opportunities so that you guys don't have to necessarily just rely on the online versions. But I do know there are some different proctors here locally. And again, my goal is to get that out to you all so you know what is more readily available to you.
All right, thank you.
You are very welcome. Great question. Okay, so with that being said, that has concluded the 5 major changes to the Retail Food Code. And I wanted to share with you here, just in my last slide, the contact information for assistance. So again, please know that your biggest advocate and best resource that you have is your assigned environmental health specialist. So we as a team are here to assist you. Whenever we come out to do an inspection, again, please know that we are your partner. I know that during an inspection sometimes is stressful and you have a lot going on, and we understand the challenges of that, but please know, even if you maybe don't get all your questions out during your inspection, at any time you can reach out to your environmental health specialist, as well as our team as a whole, which you see is listed as the Environmental Health Division contact information. So here in our office, we do have staff that cover our front desk from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. We are located inside the Citizen Service Center, which is on Garden of the Gods Road. We are on the second floor. And if you look for the signs for environmental health, that is where you will find my and my team's office. I am in the office as well, not 24/7, but you can always feel free to contact me directly if you want to specifically talk with me or meet with me on something that you have questions about. My information is included there, as well as on my emails that I've been sending out. You have all my contact information there also. So again, our primary goal is to ensure that we are here to support you as industry through these changes. Now, another piece to this is because there are quite a few different nuances to every establishment, what may or may not apply to your particular establishment with the other changes that have happened, we are going to work with you on an individual basis during your inspections on those. And as we go and mark violations, we are going to give that leniency in not having those violations count towards negatively towards the score of your inspection with these new requirements for a while to give industry time for, again, awareness of what applies to their operation, how it applies to your operation, and again, partner with you through those changes. So time is going to be allowed to get industry all on the same page with what exactly you are required to do for your establishment. So I'm going to pause there and see if you have other questions. Open forum here. Yes, Samuel.
On the with the instructions on a lot of the food and with a lot of the restrictions the cities are putting in place with disposable items or compostable items, like say French fries, on a lot of times on the package it says, cook to this temperature, then place over paper towels to dry. But with composting, you get into that whole vegetable category, the vegetable oils, you're not supposed to compost that. How does that work exactly? Because I mean, Manitou Springs has like the most restrictive guidelines in place for composting.
Yeah, and I can understand where that frustration would come from. All I can say to that point is that composting requirement isn't under our guidance and rules as El Paso County Public Health and the Retail Food Code. So during our inspection, that is not something that we're going to be focusing on or regulating and in our code.
I understand that part, but what it is if they inspect us, we could be kicked out of events for breaking their guidelines, even though we're following instructions from the manufacturer.
Oh, I see. Okay. So let me clarify here that when I'm talking about following instruction for the manufacturer, I'm specifically talking about temperatures. So the food code is talking about temperatures, not necessarily the method.
Not the whole instruction. Okay. That's what I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. So sorry. Thank you for that great question. So I could clarify that. Yep. So when we're talking about the manufacturer directions, we're specifically talking about the required cook temperatures. That's what we're worried about. So thank you for that question. That is very helpful. Wayne, how can I help you?
Hi, thanks for helping us with all these new materials. And I want to share it with my team as well. How can we get the deck that you've been walking us through and a copy of the team's meeting?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to be working with our communications team to get these materials on our website so they are easily found. In the meantime, in response after this is concluded, I will absolutely send you guys the slide deck for you to reference. And as soon as I am able, we will get a copy of this recording as well available for public view.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Hello, Amanda. How can I help you?
Hello. When you were talking about the certified food protection manager,
yep.
You brought up that it's no point of really having that unless they have knowledge of the 5 foodborne illness awareness, right? So do you guys have something on your website that kind of gives refresh to people who maybe took that test 2 years ago, and we can kind of give them like a refresh of those issues that they need to be aware of?
So you're asking for some just refresher guidance on those 5 foodborne illness risk factors, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, because some people took those tests, a while ago, and then if
Yeah.
it's not something constantly in their head, they might not necessarily know exactly what you're talking about when you ask them that question.
Yeah, understood. So absolutely, this handout is available, and as well, we do have other handouts on our website, and I'm going to be searching for some more in particular updated ones, and I'll be sure to get that on our website as soon as possible as well, because that is a great point of being able to have more up-to-date guidance for refreshers for everybody. Absolutely. And also know if there's something, particular guidance document that you would really like that maybe you're having challenges with training food handlers or just something in particular, you can always reach out to us directly for a particular request. In the meantime, I will absolutely be working towards getting updated handouts for industry as well.
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. Manny, how can I help you? And
Uh,
oh, there you are. Okay.
just to kind of clarify, so 7-Eleven convenience stores, they're considered limited, right?
Majority are. There are some that do fall into that with deli if there's some assembling going on. But if majority of 7-Elevens do fall into that limited category and would not be required to have the certified food protection manager.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I believe so majority of the stores in Colorado Springs does not have any
Yeah.
deli.
Yeah. And I know that is that's goes for majority. I just wanted to make that distinction just in case there was one that took things a little further for assembling and falls into that larger category. But yes, majority of 7-Elevens are limited. So I really encourage you all to look back at your actual license type. And if you don't have a copy of your license or you have questions around that, please know you can reach out to us and we can provide that clarification for you.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Is there any other questions anybody has? Okay. Well, I greatly appreciate this opportunity to talk with you all today. Thank you for the wonderful questions. It also really helps me ensure that my team and myself can provide those clarifications during inspections as well. If you have any remaining questions, again, please, I encourage you, reach out to your assigned environmental health specialist, or you can reach out to our team as a whole. The phone number you see in the middle there for our environmental health division, that goes to our front administrative staff who are always manning those phones. If they don't answer, please know it's probably just because they're on the line helping another customer. If you leave a voicemail, we will absolutely return that voicemail as quickly as possible. You could also email us at that general inbox. And again, as always, you can contact me directly. I want to thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Beautiful day.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you, Carlos Bistro.
Thank you, Samantha.